Hi guys, and welcome to another Are You Autistic video. But I thought before I continue with it, why not tell my diagnosis story so that you guys know if you're going for a diagnosis, which I always recommend, always seek a professional to confirm what you might believe to be you, because autism is not a disease. It is a disorder. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder. But yeah, so if you want to get tested, I do encourage that, but I'll tell you how I was tested. So after struggling, and not being able to seemingly, I guess, like be an adult properly, that's how the people around me were noticing it to be. So, sir, here's mum and dad, the way I wasn't coping being an adult, right? I was an adult, but I wasn't. And as we know, too late of my mental age being significantly lower than my chronological age, yes, we now have a very strong feeling of concern of how mentally young was I when I was young. So basically, it started off for me being a joke after a dinner party. We did a quiz because a friend of mine's niece was diagnosed with autism, and I went, girls don't have autism, but obviously they do because she just got diagnosed. Tell me more. And I was only doing it from me being social welfare and psychology. I thought, this is interesting. I'd like to know. And you know, sometimes you feel like maybe I could be helpful, you know. And anyway, I'm listening to the stuff and I'm going, oh, well, this is making me uncomfortable. Oh, I'm feeling a bit of shame. Oh, I'm feeling a little bit, oh dear, what if, nah. And anyway, I ignored it. And then at this dinner party with my friend, and this is many, could be years later actually. It could be a year later, 2 years later, I don't even know. We're after dinner party, we're sitting around. We did an online quiz as a joke. It wasn't much of a joke. About a week later for me, because I significantly, I scored on the quiz, but I actually didn't answer honestly, because I was noticing that I was every single thing on the quiz was pointing, being a psychology knowledge person, I was like, oh, okay, let's just pretend that no, I never had that problem. No, I don't struggle with this. No, because I was totally and utterly too scared to show the struggle, which of course was never shown to friends, was only ever shown to family, my in-laws and Sir at the time. So anyway, I ended up saying to Sir, you know, like, what if my struggles, and what if the antidote to that, to getting me, you know, on the good pathway of coping better, what if this is it? But I was in doubt, right? So I'm coming from a place of, I'm asking him because I'm really like scratching my head like, am I crazy for saying this? You know, like, because how could I get by if I'm autistic? I was as a kid, this. It was a very conflicting feeling because I pretty much shut off my childhood because of the shame of being an autistic child, that in my era, if, you know, you were autistic and a girl, it was shame, punishment. You are a difficult, bad child. You are a problem child. It was awful to feel like that. So the shame and getting everything wrong, special needs, learning disabilities, wetting myself up until 11, wetting the bed until 18, really embarrassing stuff. Not talking, having, you know, I think I was 13 or 14, we're at a gathering around Christmas, New Year with my stepdad's family, and one of my step cousins yelled at me. I was just sitting in a chair near my mum, because she's my person at the time, And I'm sitting in this chair and just totally quiet in my own head because of the selective mutism was still in existence because this was not my family. And so she just yelled at me, "Why don't you speak? Are you stupid?" And she got told off, but not enough actually, but a little bit told off, I guess you could say. And of course, the shame was huge, huge, because none of that was on purpose. I didn't know how to engage. And so I'd shut off my childhood of the autism because to me, all of my autism, me, the parts of me, was shame. And it's only been since the diagnosis and the diagnosis sinking in, me accepting it, did the shame go away. But in reflection, I don't forget that shame. But I will say, whoever made me feel ashamed, shame on them. Shame on them in the past and shame on anyone that does it now. Terrible thing to do to a person that is autistic and is, let's just use the old label, retarded. Shame on people that pick on people that can't fight back. So as I went along with this conversation with Sir, he's like, "No, I really think you are." I said, "Really?" And I was angry at him actually. My first response was, "Fuck you, you're calling me a retard." Now I'm speaking here of what the abuse that was done to me, guys, because I was autistic and I was that, and my family were calling me that. Not the good ones, the bad ones. So I wore that label. I knew I was. So I knew this was true. But the bit that I had to overcome was letting that floodgate open of, oh my God, all of those memories of wetting myself, all sorts of humiliating things that a 2-year-old does at like 10 or 11, okay? Humiliating things that instead of it being treated like autistics today, geez, this child is very autistic, I will help them with respect. No, that was not my experience. We were punished, shamed, beaten, hit for being autistic. Fact. And I think respect has to be shown to my generation for not just growing up autistic and struggling, but being punished, shamed, ridiculed, called names by even parents. Terrible. Being treated extremely different, but not knowing why. For example, sitting at the dinner table, I could never have a drink. And I never understood why. It's because I spilt it all the time, dyspraxia. No one ever told me why I was not allowed to have a drink at the dinner table. So it's very difficult when you feel singled out and you know that you are different. So I said to him, okay, well, I thought, I'll prove you wrong then. I'll go get tested. Because you know what? I need to work out what's wrong with me and make it better. Because I wasn't coping with the level of adulting expected to the developmental level, which luckily was said by my psychiatrist. If anyone expects you to be developmentally something that you're not, it's abuse. And that made me feel better. Because that's right, guys. If you're autistic and you're developmentally delayed, which you are, if you are autistic, you have developmental delay somewhere. Otherwise, you don't have autism. Because it goes hand in hand. You might even have IDD. And these things are not our fault. That's our brain. That's what we were born with. And we should never be shamed and never be punished for it. So anyway, I go through the testing. He does the DSM testing, which involves a booklet, involves verbal conversations, verbal questioning. And the reason he said to me and laughed at me when I said, but really, am I autistic? After so many sessions, I think 10 sessions, and at home, the DSM booklet was brutal. A lot of questions. And of course, a lot of thinking, because you've got to really think, okay, well, how did I struggle? And of course, my natural thing for me was, no, I didn't really struggle that much. And then I'm like, no, come on, be honest. Be honest. Stop lying to yourself. That was the best thing and the best advice I can give you is stop lying to yourself. Be honest. If you're struggling and you are autistic, be honest. Because if someone shames you for not being able to do something that you genuinely can't do, like my psychiatrist said, it's abuse. And when I had my neuropsych report state, when I was 48, 49, that I'm 18 mentally, I wasn't surprised. I said that to her because when she approached me with it, she was respectful to the point where she was like, look, I have to tell you something. This is after, like I said, 15 hours of testing. She said it so respectfully in case it hurt me. And I said to her, I knew. I know, basically, because of how my life has been. So when I went through the testing, the reason he joked, he could tell in the first 5 minutes when I said, am I really? Is because, and apparently in America you do the toothbrush test or something. That's not what he did with me, which is good. I think that psychiatrists, you need to shake it up a bit. And please don't misuse this type of thing and fake autism, because I do not like that. But anyway, he asked me, what do you do when you get home? And I'm thinking, okay, this is just an icebreaker. No worries. Oh, well, I just do this. And then I thought, oh, okay, my other psychologist, no, she'd say I'm rambling. I said, oh, I'm sorry. He's like, no, keep going. Like, what else would you do, you know, with your routine once you get home from, you know, wherever you've been out? And so I had more to say because I was busting to say it, because I have regimes. I have very rigid ways of operating. Otherwise, executive functioning, 0. I have to have a method. I have to have step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. That's why I think OCD is so integrated and can even overflow. As a kid, I couldn't walk on cracks. If I walked on a crack, then something bad was going to happen. Walking home from school was traumatic. I had so many phobias. So OCD is very connected. I did a lot of counting things, which was exhausting. Exhausting. And these behaviors now would be picked up so easily by parents even, let alone a professional. But in my era, it was just, she's a bit weird. She's just a bit weird. She's just very, very, very shy. And so basically, yeah, I rambled on about this whole thing. And then I've only just learnt recently, actually, why they do that. That they're looking for the rigidity and the excessive explanation about what you just did. And it's like, oh my goodness, yeah. I walked right into that trap. But that's because I'm autistic. And that's what I'm like in life. That's how exhausting it is to be autistic. We don't get to just float around and just... That's why when we go into a decompression moment, and you might not even know because we're not in our decompression zone, okay, and we go in here, we like it because it's a cleansing. We might be overloaded and preventing a meltdown. So if you have a child, leave them there. So long as they're not staying there, of course. They've got to have a variety of things going on, a little bit of a push here and there. I get it. But like, we don't want to overwhelm the autistic child because, let's be honest, even a neurotypical child, you wouldn't want to overwhelm. So let's be nice to the autistic children, please. Because growing up autistic, let's be honest, growing up is hard. Neurotypical say. And it's even harder for us. So And like I said, phobias as a child autistic is another sign. Massive phobias I had. I could not sleep without a light on. I literally, for the first 13 years of my life, slept with the full lights on. That was the only option, because I suffer hypnagogic hallucinations when I fall asleep, which is totally, it's not real. Well, as a kid, I didn't know, but the psychiatrist said it's a neurological thing where as you're falling asleep, but you're still awake, you're just imagining things, as in, it's not real, but it feels real at the same time. It's horrible. So as a child, not a good experience. As an adult, I'm just like, oh, damn, that was weird. It better be just a hallucination, And it's just when you're just falling asleep. It's called hypnagogic. It is not necessarily, as far as I know, connected to autism. I don't know. But I'm just saying, I had to sleep with the full light on because the phobias of more than that, I had so many phobias. Then as a teenager, it was nightlight. As an adult, nightlight. Still, don't like the dark. So basically there's that, because you don't grow out of autism. Funny that. And so basically, yeah, I did the whole DSM thing. They score it. And yeah, we had a big discussion about it, but I needed more, I must admit. But he's like, I can't go through everything here because there's so much wrong. He said that late diagnosis is difficult because everything's been and gone. All of my formative years have been messed up. That I've already obviously pushed through to the point where, I'd been to university, and he just said, your best place is actually just to go into your special interests, to be honest. And particularly, I think he's encouraging like my career to be in my special interest, which is what I did until I got sick. And that's what I would give the best advice. If you are autistic now, or if you have a child that's autistic, is to push them into a job that is connected to their special interest. Another thing is they might not be able to work full time. Autism causes extreme fatigue. It is a very exhausting thing, and that is because we get very overstimulated, which is exhausting. The world is not built for us, so we have to use extra brain power, and that kind of engages the whole body, and it's exhausting. And with interoception, we don't know when to relax our body, and we're very tense. We are very tense. There is a lot of anxiety involved in that, a lot of tension. A lot of us have ADHD. 80% apparently is the new stat, and I'm not surprised. My son has the combo, I have the combo. So, to me, it's like, makes sense. So it's very fatiguing. So I know that if I didn't have 22q and I didn't have all of my other diagnoses underneath that, that is the reason for me having all of those. If I didn't have that to face, then I probably would be working part-time and probably really doing well at it, but I don't think I could work full-time because of the fatigue of having to mask, even though I would get a job where I was not having to be part of. If I had to be part of a neurotypical team, it wouldn't work. It would end up in either bullying towards me, it would end up miscommunication without anyone's, not their fault, not my fault, just wouldn't work. And that's just the fact for me. I would not be able to work with neurotypical people because the languages that we both speak are not the same. And in all fairness to the neurotypical, they don't have time in their job and are not paid extra to help me understand things, right? And I can't get a support worker, say if I was that high functioning, so I wasn't physically sick and I didn't have all these things and I was going to work part-time, they can't afford to give me an aid. So anyway, it's just, it wouldn't work. I would need to probably work on my own, running like my own sort of small business, or working in an office situation where it's just me and working on a computer, or a hands-on job alone a little bit where I don't have to have so much sensory input, right? Of the smells of people, the conversations and the small talk and I can't do all that and do my job. And then I'd have to be protected because every job I do, because of OCD, because of, you know, the perfectionism problem, all of that, I so get right into it. I have to be perfect at it, and I master it, and I do become perfect at it. It creates the colleagues around me to not like me. And then socially, I can't navigate that at all. That is the common cycle that I've lived. And then people just turn on you. And unfortunately, neurotypicals can be brutal, mean, rude, and don't accept us. So if the world wants the autistic to be working, the reason 86% of us don't, so take away all my medical issues, put me to work, the reason why I'd have to be in a supported workplace is because of all the neurotypicals being assholes, basically. So that's why autism acceptance is essential for high functioning, middle functioning, and even low functioning. Okay? Thanks. So acceptance is key, but we don't have it yet. Not in my country. We don't have it. So at the end of the day, the working is the hard bit, but I do think that it is essential, because autism is not an excuse to not live a full life of whatever you have the opportunity to do. The only level of autism where I'd go, if someone is, you know, totally nonverbal, I don't think any of us can say, this is how you should live. No. I think we should just leave those families alone, because they're doing it the hardest. And at the end of the day, let them choose what feels right for them, their child, because everyone's scenario is different. We can't really, every nonverbal family is different. Sorry, but some people are just so stupid. I have to over-explain it. And then people in the middle like me, we are always told, but you could just be so neurotypical, put the mask on. It's like, but I can't put the mask on. I'm not a masker, because when I do mask, it fails. And most of the time I don't mask. I never masked as a kid. I never masked as a teenager. I didn't know I was so stupid. I see it now, because I've had 51 years on the earth, and I can look back and go, oh my God, I used to do that. Oh, they weren't laughing with me, they were laughing at me. But I don't care, because it's kind of a superpower of being autistic. We don't care what people think of us, so long as they're not causing our life harm or disturbance or anything, just like anyone. But basically, yeah, it's like people in the middle have it kind of the hardest, because we can't function as well, but we don't get given that grace at all. And so we keep trying, and what do? Rejection, failure, rejection, failure, rejection. And then we master being good at being rejected and failing. And then everyone goes, if you're so fine about being rejected and failing, then you've got the problem. And it's like, oh, fuck, I can't win. Anyway, for some reason, Jesus gave me some physical conditions. So he took me out. Maybe on purpose, because he thought, geez, you're just getting such a hard time, I'll get you out. But Jesus, this isn't the right one. It's painful. I don't like this physical crap. So anyway, I do often dream, if I didn't have physical disability and I just had autism, I still see a lot of issues. I would have to be in supported work where I was kept safe, under supervision at all times. I'm vulnerable to crime towards me in all different directions. That was made very clear by my neuropsychologist. So it makes a lot of sense, my vulnerabilities. You know, when I lived alone for a period of time, I was an adult, yet I didn't sleep. I was checking every window and every door 1,000 billion times, because I wasn't old enough mentally to live alone. And it caused me trauma. because no one understood that I wasn't capable. Except for my parents-in-law did. And my mother-in-law would always say, if you want me to sleep over, I will. So I had support, but being me, I don't ask for help. I'm not good at that. So I didn't. But anyway. Sorry, I love my mother-in-law, and she took me on like I was her child because my mum didn't want to be my mum. And I think that's, once again, I blame autism. I think that she's ashamed of me. I think that because of my family's affluence that I'm not polished enough, that I'm not good enough for them. Now I know that's not the case. I know that I am good enough, autistic and all, 22Q and all, but I knew that this was going to end this way, the way I've been treated since the day I can remember. I remember even asking about my birth, and it's a no-go zone. I don't, nothing was shared. I don't have any photos of me under 6 or 9 months old. All I remember is my mum whinging about the birth. Yes, it was a traumatic birth. She has the right to whinge, but maybe not to me, maybe to her friends and family. And then, of course, I wouldn't feed, I wouldn't sleep. There was many problems with me. So I was the problem child, because not just autism, but 22Q. 22Q has gastroparesis and got a high palate. I would have had major colic. There would have been major problems. Anyway, I don't know if she was told about anything, because she refuses to speak to me since 22Q diagnosis even, which I can't imagine how a mother could do that personally. But I guess it's the guilt of not coping with me, which is sad, because when I look at myself as a special needs child with autism and 22Q, I have more empathy for her not having the supports from anyone, being a single mum and not having government supports like an NDIS support worker or anything like that, and everything she went through with me. I was high care child, and she was a single mum of 2 children, 2 years apart. So basically, I just wish that she had the maturity to understand that I have the forgiveness because of that. But at the same time, there should be a sorry, because she didn't cope and she didn't make the best decisions towards me for my struggles. Being made to sleep in a wet bed as punishment for an autistic doesn't help an autistic. So if you don't think that people that are diagnosed late are not autistic, so this is what you can tell people, guys. Your struggle as well is you say these things. Then what was that? Because that's a developmental delay. And that is the response of that generation towards us, because of exactly what some naysayers say now. But you can be neurotypical if you want to, because look at you. But I can't. Just like as a kid, I couldn't stop wetting the bed until 18 years of age. I had no choice. I actually have a medical condition that caused it. So developmental delay was also part of that. Interception, not speaking, not communicating with the parent can't communicate with the hospital, nothing was done. Delay in medical care is so common in non-verbal children. And in Australia, if you're selective mute as you get older, then they don't think, maybe I should check for infections because she doesn't communicate, she doesn't say she's in pain. They're dipsticks here. They don't have a brain. In America, you guys are a little different. You are a bit more advanced in that way of thinking, and some other countries maybe too. But here, and particularly in my generation, But that's the punishments that also was applied at home by a parent. In today's world, that's abuse, right? But back then it was not abuse. Go figure. So I think X generation have really been ripped off with acknowledgement of anything, to be honest. I mean, it's like we don't exist. No one talks about us. We suffered. And I'm talking about I'm saying every autistic and ADHD person out there has suffered trauma from being autistic, ADHD, or the both. Suffered abuse from teachers, parents. And it's not okay. But it happened to us. And I find it interesting that us X generation, I'm proud of it, is we're so forgiving to our parents. But our parents are so rigid and harsh and don't really give us any empathy. Still, there's still tough love, and it needs to stop. Tough love is gross. It's just a way of saying, I'm so dysfunctional and I can't love properly that I'm just going to go, I don't give a shit. It's lazy. Love is actions. I look at it all the time, you know. I listen to people say, oh, I like you, or, you know, even my own sons, I love you. Yeah, but you don't show it. People have to show you, guys. Saying I like you, I love you is nothing. It's actions. It's how you're treated, made to feel by the end of their presence. Or do they even have a presence in your life? And I resent people, especially as an autistic. Don't say you like me and love me and not show it. Because I will measure that and go, well, in the theory of the like and the love, that's not true. Because it's a theory, right? Because you look at a book and it says no actions. Well, then that's the rules. I'm rigid like that. I can't change. At least I'm factual though. So if you are autistic, at least you're full of facts and you tell the truth and you stick to all those things. You got to focus on the positive side. But I just want to say to any of you who are any generation rejected by your family for being autistic, then whether you're undiagnosed or diagnosed, definitely seek a diagnosis if you feel you're undiagnosed. I do recommend it. And I do recommend that you look at all these things, speak about these things. I don't care if it's Facebook posts. I don't care if it's hashtag adult autistic or late diagnosis or, you know, talk about I'm undiagnosed and this is how I know how, because you've lived it. And when you look back and you see behaviors and you go, like I heard on TV recently, you know, yes, no, children can dress themselves at 4.5. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, my kids did, but I didn't. I was like, oh my God. I remember my mum at 10 going, you've really got to start dressing yourself now. And I'm like, how? I'm thinking, I'm starting to stress. I'm like, I can't. Everything's going to be back to front, inside out, and nothing's going to match. And that's what happened at first. I'd walk out, Mum would go, no. Of course, a lot of it was non-verbal. I think we ended up with a bit of sign language in our house and a bit of different. I brought a lot of words that aren't real words to our house that my brother and my mum had to adopt. Anyway, my brother could read me fluently without speaking. She wants this. Thanks, bro. I'd give him the nod. He knew what I needed. He was my interpreter. My brother really did a lot for me. More than what I ever knew before. He was my protector, my interpreter, my defender against my mum. He would protect me from getting into trouble because of my ADHD and just not being regulated sometimes, and he would help regulate me. And if he saw anyone picking on me, he would bring me and it'd be, don't you hurt my sister. Because I did get bullied a lot because of autistic behaviours. Wetting myself at school, of course I'm going to get bullied. Of course. Not speaking, I was treated like, my peers treated me like a puppy dog. Guys, bring me in, because I didn't speak. So I didn't really get the true experience of school. I was a baby who was being babied by everybody. Female teachers did it too. It was just the male teachers that used to yell at me the most about not speaking. But if you have any of these developmental delays, maybe you have an intellectual disability. You might have one, you might have more than one. I do think you need to look into getting an autism diagnosis, because the supports are essential for some of us. And if you don't need supports, then maybe you don't need a diagnosis. Maybe you need to just follow things online. There's so much. Like, we are blessed. Think about, I don't know, think about my generation. We never had Google. We never had mobile phones. I remember as a kid wanting a private conversation with my friends, because, you know, I was the teenage dork who stayed home every weekend. I wasn't a cool kid, right? And I used to, because my stepdad worked for Telecom with the serial killer. Lovely. And basically, he bought this thing on a roll, and I'd unroll it and I'd go upstairs. It was quite a distance from the kitchen phone. It was across the dining room, upstairs, and then my room was all the way on the other side. I was like, oh. And then I'd close the door, and it was a flat cord, which is great. Close the door, goes under the door, and I'd be like, hi, we can speak. And then, but my friend would be on the other side, and I'd be like, hang on. And you'd know what that meant was mum or dad or my siblings have walked into the kitchen, and we have to stop talking. So it's like, it's safe now. Anyway. And here I am, I'm in my room like, oh, I could say whatever I want. And they could have been listening on the other side. But anyway, no, they didn't need to. I was a good kid. They knew I was a dork. So, yeah, any of these things, guys, things like that, like, especially, like, even when it comes to dating. Everyone else is dating and you're like, no, I don't date. What is that thing? Ah, yeah, I guess. Yeah, no, one day I guess I'll have a husband, but what's... I didn't understand the concept. This is after school. This is, you know, this is when everyone was... My friends had finished year 12, and they're like, seriously, you don't have a boyfriend? I'm like, no. They're like, you've been working, because I did year 11, I didn't do year 12. And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, we've got this guy, look at his. No. And they always try to set me up. I wasn't ready. It was like, everything was a delay. Every single thing was a delay. And even a friend of mine, or two, I mean, there could be a few, I do believe the girls I got on the best with at school were on the spectrum, because they also had delays, and we connected in those delayed ways. However, I have to admit, majority of in primary school and high school, my social play, if I did it, was with much younger children. And that was because they were at my level of social abilities, where I felt equal, rather than my peers going, oh, come here, because I was tiny and they're like up here. So they think that I'm a baby, and I was treated like a baby, which wasn't all bad. It kept me safe because I'm autistic, and I wasn't able to speak and navigate. So if a teacher came up, it was like, especially, you know, the duty teachers, and you don't know them, I wasn't even speaking to my classroom teachers, so how am I going to speak to a teacher? And duty teachers are intimidating, aren't they? They're like, they turn into a police officer, I swear. And they walk along, don't they? And they're like, what are you kids doing? And you're like, geez, we're just standing on the pathway and it's like recess or lunch or something. It's like, is it a crime? It's brutal, right? But then again, when I look at kids now, you know, school's not doing good with these kids. The discipline's not doing our kids any good, the lack of it, I should say. It's not helping. But so maybe a little bit of fear wasn't bad. I don't know. Maybe it didn't really hurt. But being autistic and unable to speak, of course, it's more intimidating. So if you found school not just difficult, but traumatic, where another person that's having the same experience would just explain it. Like if I was standing here with my friends from primary school, who I could find on Facebook in 2 seconds, and they go, oh yeah, hi Dyan, how you going? I have many people I know in Perth, because I'm born and bred here, but basically, you know, they'd say, oh yeah, you know, they always used to try and intimidate, didn't they? And here I am. For me, it's a trauma, guys, because I couldn't speak. I couldn't, like, defend myself if I needed to, or explain a situation if I needed to because it was demanded. I had no ability to navigate that. Going on school camp was extremely traumatizing. I would cry. I would, every night until the last night. And the beautiful thing that one of my teachers did was she said, this is year 7, so this is 12 years old. She said to me, she goes, I know you feel like you failed on camp, because I felt like I did. There's many things I struggle with, many things, like the night transition. I'd always sit at the dining room where we all were, and I'd always cry, because I still don't cope now at 51 with transitioning from day to night. I don't cope. And so if I'm not doing what I need to be doing to cope with that transition, then I would just burst into tears, because I was overwhelmed with feelings I didn't know how to explain, because I have alexithymia. And the teachers are trying to work out what's wrong, and I don't even know what's wrong, so I can't tell them what's wrong. So she said, I know you feel like you failed, but did you notice last night that everything went great? Dinner time went great. The whole day was wonderful. The concert thing we did was wonderful. You went to sleep. But I remember thinking, yeah, that was because all I thought about was getting home to my mum, who was my person. That's all I focused on. The whole bus trip home, I was just like, teleport me, you know, like I just need to be home in my chair with my yellow blanket and my mum and my brother. That's all I wanted. And that's 12. So, and whereas all the other girls were just so much more grown up. So if you notice any of these things about yourself, then maybe you are autistic. Maybe you might want to get a diagnosis, maybe not. But don't be ashamed of developmental delays, of your autism, learning disabilities. The traumas you went through at school were not your fault. And have some grace and empathy for yourself, okay? Because I think if we look back at this, those teachers, maybe our parents, would have done better if they knew better. Maybe. That's all you can hope. I know things in the past can be traumatic, but we can look back at it and retell the story in more of a lighter way, as in, like I've just said, have compassion for those people just not knowing that we weren't doing it on purpose. Maybe they did think we were doing that on purpose, but we weren't. And if they knew that, they probably would have acted differently. So you don't have to look back at it so, lift it for yourself by looking back at it and having compassion for the other person and going, they just didn't know. They just didn't know about autism. They didn't know I was autistic. And sadly in those days, disability was, I remember in year 7 looking after a girl at school who was blind because everyone was so mean to her. And I think the reason that I really connected with her was because subconsciously I knew that I was being abused for my disability, but I just didn't realise what it was. I knew that I was developmentally delayed, and so did the teachers, and that was the big discussion, was she's hyperactive, developmentally delayed, and she's got intellectual disabilities. That was discussed at length. Even my mum was told, oh, there's all these problems, but she would deny it. Maybe that's a bit of cognitive dissonance. My child's normal. What are you saying? Okay, because back then, parents were blamed. If the child was not performing, the parent was blamed. So the parent can go through just as much shame back then as the kids did. Have empathy, because everyone in your story that might have played a role where you think, but they were so mean. Try and think about, why were they mean, or why weren't they coping? Because that might be a little way of having some empathy, and that makes it easier for yourself to get through it. Because isn't it worse to sit there and think that they did it to just be malicious? Maybe they did it because they just were ignorant to autism. So anyway, I hope that some of this discussion has helped you to work out, am I autistic? Is someone in my family that I'm thinking about, are they autistic? Or I hope this helps. And I do encourage getting an autism diagnosis if it's a struggle, as in your level of functioning. Everyone's level of functioning with autism, it's a spectrum, is different. Everyone's needs are different, but it's life-changing to go through the, I guess, the therapies and learn how to live a way that suits autism. It's life-changing. It's life-changing. You get control of your life again, basically, because you start living authentically and you stop trying to be something that you're not, and failing at it, basically, anyway. Do you want to just be a failing fake person, or do you want to be authentic? That's what you've got to ask yourself, because one thing that autistics do that is toxic is people please, because we don't want people to point out what we do wrong. Just do it wrong and tell people to back off, because you're just being you. Because neurotypicals are not perfect. So if a neurotypical picks on you, you just go, and what's your, struggles and flaws? What's your weaknesses? Because this is my weakness, and it's neurological, and I was born with it, and I can only improve on it, and I've maxed out on that because I'm 51. Leave me the fuck alone. Focus on your own self, because even neurotypicals have problems. They have flaws, things to work on. And I heavily believe in that. Never say other people. Focus on yourself, compete with yourself, set goals for yourself, be the best you can be. Whether you're neurotypical or autistic, it doesn't matter. No one's better than each other. Everyone's special. But I do urge you, if you are struggling, and maybe autism might be that struggle, to definitely seek diagnosis, because you deserve the therapies and you deserve to feel that peace again, like I know I used to feel as a kid when I wasn't being abused, either at home or at school, and because I was able to be myself. I only masked because I noticed in high school, it was like, oh, they don't like this, okay? I'd just be a robot. So anyway, I hope this has helped. And take care. See you in the next video.